Imagine waking up one morning to breaking news. U.S. warships spotted moving toward the Caribbean. American forces on high alert. Venezuela accuses Washington of preparing for war. There is no official declaration, no explosions, no sirens, just tension, quiet but palpable, spreading across the Americas like a storm cloud on the horizon. Modern wars rarely start with the roar of cannons. They begin in silence, in strategy rooms, in financial sanctions, in the movement of ships and aircraft. And right now, south of Florida, a nation rich in oil, aligned with some of America's most powerful rivals, is collapsing from within, inviting foreign influence and testing the limits of U.S. patience. This is Venezuela, once the richest country in Latin America, now a nation where millions have fled, streets are empty of essentials, crime thrives, and institutions meant to protect citizens are hollowed out. Nicolas Maduro sits at the center of this storm, defiant and supported by allies like Russia, China, and Iran. For the United States, this is not just a story about oil, politics, or ideology. It is about security, regional stability, and influence. And right now, all signs point toward a growing risk of confrontation. In this video, I will take you through 10 key points explaining why war between the United States and Venezuela could happen. By the end, you'll understand why the world is watching more closely than ever and what could come next. Point 1. Oil, the real battlefield. Venezuela is sitting on the largest proven oil reserves in the world, even surpassing Saudi Arabia. This is not just a statistic, it is a strategic reality. Energy fuels economies, militaries, and industries. Whoever controls Venezuela's oil can influence global power, alliances, and economics. For decades, the United States has acted to protect access to energy and prevent adversarial control over key resources. Allowing Venezuela's oil to fall under a hostile regime's influence, or even simply to be used as a political tool, would have consequences far beyond Caracas. Sanctions have been carefully designed to limit the regime's ability to exploit its oil while avoiding catastrophic harm to civilians. But the stakes remain high. Oil is not just energy, it is influence. Control of it can sway governments, shape markets, and even dictate who sits at the negotiating table in global conflicts. Imagine a world where Venezuela, aligned with Russia or China, decides to leverage its oil reserves for political gain. Prices fluctuate, allies are pressured. The balance of power in the Western Hemisphere shifts dramatically. That is why Washington watches Venezuela's oil like a hawk. Every shipment, every refinery, every export decision carries global consequences. Point 2. Foreign military influence. Venezuela has become a strategic playground for foreign powers. Russian bombers have landed on Venezuelan runways. Chinese firms operate key infrastructure, while Iranian advisors quietly assist in security and military operations. From the U.S. perspective, this is alarming. The Western Hemisphere has historically been considered a U.S. sphere of influence. During the Cold War, even minor moves by rival powers triggered global crises. Today, Washington sees the same patterns. Proximity matters. When foreign powers gain influence so close to American borders, the response is rarely delayed. This is not about ideology. It is about security, leverage, and influence. For decades, the U.S. has avoided foreign military threats near its shores, and Venezuela's partnerships with Moscow, Beijing, and Tehran are viewed as direct challenges. Each new shipment of weapons, each new advisor on the ground, increases the tension and risk of miscalculation. Point 3. The collapse of democracy. Nicolas Maduro's regime is widely viewed as illegitimate in Washington. Elections have been criticized internationally, opposition figures are imprisoned, and political institutions weakened. For the United States, this eliminates the normal diplomatic channels that prevent conflict. When a government loses legitimacy, pressure builds. Without trust or recognition, small disputes escalate rapidly. Sanctions, condemnations, and public warnings all carry greater weight when no meaningful dialogue exists. In Venezuela, every misstep is amplified. Without legitimate institutions, the country is vulnerable to instability, protests, and the lure of foreign intervention. The U.S. position is clear. Continued recognition of Maduro only strengthens authoritarian control and encourages alignment with hostile global powers. Democracy is not just a principle, it is a tool of stability in a region historically prone to crises. Point 4. Regional stability and migration. The collapse of Venezuela's economy and governance has led to millions fleeing across borders, creating one of the largest migration crises in Latin America. Neighboring countries like Colombia, Brazil, and Caribbean nations are overwhelmed. Resources are strained. Crime and corruption exploit the desperate. For the United States, this is not a distant problem. Instability in the region affects security, trade, and international relations. History has shown that refugee crises often lead to broader conflicts if left unchecked. Washington monitors not only the situation inside Venezuela, but also the ripple effects that threaten regional allies. If migration continues to rise, the U.S. may be drawn into the conflict indirectly, providing aid, security, or even military support to stabilize borders and prevent further chaos. Point 5. Drug trafficking and security threats. Venezuela has become a hub for drug trafficking routes to North America. Intelligence agencies have repeatedly alleged that figures within the regime cooperate with criminal networks, though some claims are politically charged. Even perception matters. If the U.S. believes Venezuela is actively enabling threats to its citizens, pressure and potential military responses increase. Organized crime, drug cartels, and illegal arms shipments are not abstract problems. They have real consequences for national security. The risk is clear. Unchecked criminal activity in a nation aligned with hostile powers could directly impact U.S. safety and require decisive action. Point 6. Military miscalculation. Wars often begin by accident. Naval patrols in the Caribbean, intercepted aircraft, intelligence operations, one small miscalculation, a ship perceived as hostile, a plane entering restricted airspace, could trigger rapid escalation. History is full of examples where minor incidents spiraled into full-scale wars. In a tense standoff, every movement is scrutinized. Every decision carries consequences. This invisible tension is one of the most dangerous elements of the USS-Venezuela standoff, where mistakes could ignite conflict before either side intends. Point 7. Internal collapse and power vacuums. Venezuela's economy is collapsing. Soldiers are unpaid. Infrastructure fails. Morale is low. If Maduro loses control over the military or government, chaos could erupt. In that scenario, the United States may act to stabilize the region, not to occupy, but to protect civilians and maintain security. Collapsed states create threats that spread far beyond borders, and the risk of sudden internal conflict adds urgency to U.S. planning and monitoring. Point 8. Protection of regional allies. Countries like Colombia and Brazil are directly impacted by Venezuela's instability. Any cross-border violence or proxy conflict could trigger U.S. involvement. A regional conflict, no matter how small at first, could escalate into a broader confrontation between Washington and Caracas. The U.S. commitment to protecting allies is not theoretical. It is a cornerstone of foreign policy. Venezuela's destabilization poses an immediate test of that commitment. Point 9. Failure of sanctions and diplomacy. Sanctions are intended to avoid war by pressuring the regime economically. But if sanctions fail completely, if Maduro remains entrenched and strengthens alliances with rivals, the United States may see few non-military options left. History has shown that when diplomacy and economic tools fail, the use of force becomes more likely. In Venezuela's case, continued intransigence could leave Washington with limited choices. Point 10. The trigger event. Every war has a moment that changes everything. It could be a seized tanker, a downed aircraft, or a violent crackdown broadcast worldwide. One incident could shift public opinion on political pressure and military planning in ways that make conflict inevitable. This is the most dangerous point. While all other factors build tension, the trigger is what actually starts the war. One event could turn a standoff into full-scale military confrontation in days. In my opinion, the United States does not want war with Venezuela, but it also cannot allow instability, foreign military influence, or threats to its citizens and allies to grow unchecked. Restraint is balanced by overwhelming capability. The next phase will likely involve more sanctions, intelligence, and quiet maneuvering. But if one of these 10 points reaches a breaking point, conflict could ignite suddenly. If you want more in-depth military documentaries like this, subscribe to our channel. Turn on notifications, because in the next video, we will explore what the first days of a U.S.-Venezuela conflict would actually look like, day by day.